There is a quiet moment that finds almost everyone in the stillness of the night. You are lying in bed, and without warning, it feels as if something inside you finally becomes visible. You realize you have been searching your whole life, not with your body or your actions, but with your awareness itself. Deep within your consciousness, there has always been a reaching, a subtle pull towards something just out of sight. Something that feels familiar, almost like it belongs to you, yet it keeps slipping away as if it were never fully in your grasp. In that silence, a question begins to rise. At first it is faint, but it grows steady, unavoidable. What if everything you have ever been trying to reach is also trying to reach you? What if the abundance, the love, the opportunities, the life you have imagined are not distant at all, but already moving toward you right now? And what if the only thing delaying their arrival is the assumption you are currently living in? This is where true transformation begins. Not the surface change of circumstances, but something far deeper, the shift in identity itself. Most people spend their lives waiting for life to approve of their desires. They wait for conditions to improve, for timing to align, for permission that never truly comes. They move through existence as if they are standing outside their own life, hoping it will eventually open its doors to them. But reality does not operate in that direction. Consciousness is not a passenger in the world, it is the source of it. You are not shaped by your circumstances are shaped by the state you assume within yourself. The outer world is always echoing the inner position you hold as truth. When people hear the word lottery, they immediately think of chance, randomness, and luck arriving from nowhere. But what if what we call luck is simply the natural expression of a deeply held inner assumption unfolding in physical form? A person who sees themselves as fortunate does not move through life the same way others do. Their attention is different, their choices are different. Even their timing carries a different rhythm. They notice openings others ignore. They speak when the moment is right. They step forward when hesitation would normally win. To the outside observer, it looks like coincidence, but from within, it is alignment. Life responding to an identity that has already been accepted internally. The universe is not separate from your perception of yourself. It is not distant, nor indifferent, nor randomly distributing outcomes. It reflects, with precise consistency, the identity you occupy in thought and feeling. If you carry the belief that life overlooks you, experiences will gather to confirm that belief. If you carry the quiet certainty that things tend to work in your favor, life will arrange itself in a way that supports that inner stance. Nothing is being decided against you or for you by chance. Everything is responding to the signal you continuously emit through your assumptions. Most assumptions are not consciously chosen. They are inherited, absorbed, repeated until they feel like truth. They come from early experiences, from the voices you grew up hearing, from the patterns you observed long before you questioned them. Over time, these beliefs become invisible. You stop noticing them, the way a fish does not question the water it swims in. You were told that success is difficult, that money is scarce, that good fortune belongs to others, that effort must always outweigh reward. And without realizing it, these ideas settled into your identity, shaping how you expect life to respond to you. But what is often missed is that you are always assuming something right now. Every moment carries a quiet identity underneath it, a feeling of, this is who I am in life. That feeling is not passive, it is creative. It acts like a signal, organizing experience around it. If you assume delay, life reflects delay. If you assume struggle, life organizes around struggle. If you assume that good things arrive only after long effort, then that pattern becomes the structure of your reality. Not because it is required, but because it is being accepted internally as truth. Assumption is a subtle force, yet it is constant. You assume the sun will rise. You assume the ground will hold your weight. You assume continuity in the world without questioning it. These assumptions become the foundation of your experience because you never challenge them. And in the same way, your deeper assumptions about yourself become the invisible architecture of your life. Reality does not argue with them. it simply reflects them back in physical form with remarkable consistency. There are individuals who seem to experience luck repeatedly, not because they possess something others do not, but because they carry a certain internal certainty about themselves. They move through life with the unspoken feeling that things tend to go their way. They are not forcing outcomes or chasing approval from the world. There is no inner conflict, no desperate need for life to respond. Instead, there is a quiet expectation, and from that expectation, their choices naturally align with opportunity. To others, it looks like chance, but beneath it, there is a steady identity that life keeps confirming again and again. There is a quiet certainty that begins to form inside a person when they stop negotiating with life and start living from a deeper sense of identity. It feels like belonging without needing permission, like being part of a reality where good things are not rare exceptions, but natural expressions of who you already are. In that state, there is no strain, no chasing, no emotional reaching into the distance. Instead, there is a grounded feeling that what is meant for you is already oriented toward you. This is not wishful thinking, and it is not a forced belief layered over doubt. It is a shift in inner position, where the self is no longer defined by waiting, but by being. From that state, everything begins to feel different, because the assumption has changed, and with it, the entire perception of life begins to reorganize itself around that new inner certainty. The real shift is not about repeating words or trying to convince the mind of something it does not feel. It is about entering a new inner posture where the identity you hold becomes the source from which you operate. Instead of trying to become someone in the future, you begin to experience what it feels like to already be that person now. Not as fantasy, but as an internal alignment. In that alignment, your thoughts soften, your reactions change, and your attention stops scanning for lack. There is a natural ease that begins to appear, as if you are no longer outside your life trying to enter it, but already positioned within it. From there, action is no longer driven by desperation, but by quiet certainty, and that changes everything about how life responds to you. What most people call coincidence or luck is often just the reflection of a stable inner assumption. When a person carries a consistent sense of being fortunate, they move differently through the world without needing to force anything. Their awareness is tuned to possibilities that others overlook. Their timing feels intuitive, their decisions feel lighter, and their presence becomes open rather than contracted. To the outside world, it appears random, but internally, it is coherence. Their identity is not fragmented by doubt, so their experience of life becomes more fluid. It is not that reality suddenly starts favoring them. It is that they are no longer filtering reality through a belief of separation or limitation. What they expect internally becomes the structure through which they interpret and engage the world. At its core, this is not about magic or external forces deciding your fate. It is about the relationship between consciousness and experience. Your inner state is not passive, it is generative. It organizes how you perceive, respond to, and interact with reality. When you assume struggle, your attention naturally highlights obstacles, delays, and resistance. When you assume ease, your attention begins to recognize pathways, openings, and timing that would otherwise go unnoticed. The external world does not need to change first for your experience to shift. The shift begins in how you occupy your identity in the present moment, and from that shift, your actions, interpretations, and choices begin to align with a different pattern of outcomes. This is why waiting for circumstances to improve before changing how you feel keeps people locked in the same cycle. It reverses the natural order of experience. People believe that once something happens, they will finally feel different, but in reality, it is the feeling that comes first. The inner assumption is the initiating force. It acts like a stable signal, and life organizes itself around that signal with remarkable consistency. When you assume lack, life reflects conditions that reinforce that assumption. When you assume openness and receptivity, life begins to mirror that as well. Nothing is random in the way it connects to your inner position. Experience is constantly shaped by the state you inhabit as self in each moment. Because of this, change is not about forcing outcomes or trying to control external conditions. It is about repetition of a new inner position until it becomes familiar enough to feel natural. When you repeatedly return to the feeling of already being aligned with what you desire, that state begins to lose its foreignness. It becomes the baseline from which you operate, and once it becomes the baseline, your perception adjusts automatically. You stop reacting from old assumptions and start responding from a more stable sense of inner certainty. Over time, this alters not just how you feel, but how you move, how you decide, and what you consistently notice in your environment. In that sense, imagination is not escape from reality, it is rehearsal of identity. When you intentionally feel yourself as already aligned with a different version of your life, you are not denying what is present. You are reshaping the inner framework through which the present is experienced. That framework is what the outer world eventually mirrors back. The shift is subtle at first, almost invisible, but it begins in the private space of consciousness, where identity is formed. And once that identity is stabilized, life has no choice but to reorganize around it, because experience always follows the state that is most consistently occupied within. These beliefs are not fixed facts. They are assumptions about what might happen next. And right now, without even realizing it, you may be assuming uncertainty, delay, or failure. You may be carrying the quiet expectation that things will not work out, that opportunities will pass you by, or that luck belongs to someone else. But an assumption is not truth. It is a position of mind. And the universe, as you experience it, reflects that position back to you with remarkable consistency. If you assume limitation, your perception organizes around limitation. If you assume distance from what you want, your experience will reflect that distance. Not because life is against you, but because your inner assumption becomes the framework through which reality is interpreted and formed. The powerful realization is that if fear is an assumption, then it is not permanent. It can be replaced. You are not locked into one way of seeing yourself or your future. You can begin to assume courage instead of hesitation, expectation instead of doubt, openness instead of restriction. You can begin to assume that life is already moving in your favor, that opportunities are already aligned with you, that good things are not foreign to your existence. And if assumptions shape experience, then a new assumption naturally begins to create a new pattern of life. The identity you choose to inhabit internally becomes the lens through which everything else is organized. Nothing outside of you needs to change first for this shift to begin. The most important assumption you can ever hold is simple. I am someone good things naturally reach. Not in a distant future, not after proving yourself, but now. This is not arrogance, because it does not place you above anyone else. It simply acknowledges your place in experience as someone who is part of the flow of life, not separate from it. Consciousness is already responding to you in every moment, and life is already organizing itself around your inner stance. The question is not whether you are worthy of receiving, but what you are currently assuming about your ability to receive. Because that assumption is what shapes your experience long before any external outcome appears. Each night, as you move towards sleep, there is a subtle but powerful opportunity. In that state between waking and dreaming, the mind becomes more impressionable, and the feeling you rest in begins to settle deeper into your awareness. If you fall asleep in the identity of struggle, doubt, or separation, that sense becomes familiar and carries into the next day. But if you begin to fall asleep in the feeling of already having received, already being aligned, already belonging to a life where things work out, then that sense begins to integrate into your being. It becomes less of an idea and more of an inner atmosphere. And from that atmosphere, your perception of the world starts to shift in quiet but meaningful ways. This is not about denying reality or pretending circumstances are different. It is about choosing the inner position from which reality is experienced. Consciousness is not passive, it is creative. It does not simply observe life, it organizes how life is perceived and responded to. Your assumption about yourself acts like a constant signal, and life responds to that signal by arranging experiences that match it. When that assumption is rooted in limitation, life reflects limitation. When it is rooted in openness and expectation, life begins to reflect that instead. Nothing external needs to be forced or manipulated. The shift happens internally first, and everything else follows that pattern over time. There is a deeper peace that emerges when you stop resisting life and start aligning with the idea that life is already responding to you. It is not the peace of surrendering effort, but the peace of releasing contradiction, no longer holding one belief internally while trying to force a different outcome externally. In that state, you are no longer trying to convince life to give you something. You are simply no longer assuming it is withheld. And in that subtle shift, the inner tension dissolves. You begin to move through the world without the constant pressure of needing to prove, chase, or earn existence itself. When you close your eyes and intentionally step into the feeling of already being someone who receives life with ease, you are not simply imagining a different version of yourself. You are training your inner world to accept a new structure of reality. In that quiet space, where external noise fades and only awareness remains, your mind begins to build patterns based on what you repeatedly feel to be true. That feeling is not just emotional comfort, it is informational. It tells your nervous system how to interpret situations, how to respond to uncertainty, and how to position you in relation to life itself. Over time, what once felt like a temporary state becomes more natural, more automatic, and more familiar than the old way of thinking. This is how identity slowly shifts, not through force or pressure, but through repetition of inner experience. The more you return to that state of ease, alignment, and quiet certainty, the more your mind stops treating it as imagination and starts encoding it as truth. And once that happens, your perception begins to filter reality differently. You notice different possibilities. You react with less resistance, and you carry a subtle sense of trust, even when nothing external has changed yet. At the center of this understanding is a simple truth. Transformation does not begin with effort, but with assumption. Life does not wait for you to prove yourself before responding. It responds to the state you consistently inhabit within. When you assume struggle as your baseline, even neutral situations begin to feel heavy, delayed, or blocked, because your attention is already tuned to resistance. But when you assume alignment, even small events start to feel like movement, support, and direction, because your awareness is no longer scanning for problems, but for coherence. In this way, assumption becomes the invisible framework shaping your entire experience. And when you assume that you are already the kind of person who is met with ease, clarity, and forward movement, then your thoughts naturally begin to organize around that belief. Your decisions become less reactive, your patience increases, and your interpretation of events softens. Life itself does not change instantly, but your relationship to it does, and that shift is what begins to change everything else over time. As this inner assumption continues to repeat, it starts to move deeper than conscious thought and into the level where identity is stored. You stop trying to believe and start simply noticing that you already tend to respond from a calmer place. This is where real change becomes stable. The mind no longer needs constant reminders because the state is becoming self-sustaining. You are no longer negotiating with doubt as often because doubt loses intensity when it is not fed with attention. Instead, your focus begins to rest more naturally on what feels coherent and aligned. Even your body begins to participate in this shift. Your breathing becomes slower in moments that once triggered tension. Your reactions become less impulsive, and your internal dialogue softens. These are not random changes. They are signs that a new internal pattern is forming. And once a pattern is formed, it begins to guide perception automatically, shaping how you interpret events before you even consciously think about them. With continued repetition, this state becomes less of a practice and more of a default way of being. You no longer have to remind yourself to return to it because it becomes the place you naturally fall back into when you are not consciously directing your attention elsewhere. In this space, effort begins to dissolve. What once felt like work on yourself becomes a quieter sense of alignment that travels with you throughout the day. You begin to notice that external circumstances feel less controlling, not because they have stopped changing, but because they no longer define your internal stability. This is a crucial turning point. When identity is no longer dependent on immediate outcomes, but instead anchored in an internal state of certainty, life starts to feel more responsive and less random. You act from clarity rather than reaction, and that shift alone changes the quality of everything you engage with. Eventually, what began as a simple inner feeling becomes the foundation of how you move through the world. You are no longer trying to become someone who receives with ease. You are experiencing yourself as that person in real time. This does not mean every moment is perfect or free of challenge, but it does mean your default interpretation of life has changed. You no longer interpret delay as denial or uncertainty as failure. Instead, you begin to see space, timing, and unfolding as natural parts of alignment. And because your inner state is no longer constantly contradicting what you want, there is less internal resistance pulling you away from it. In this way, life does not need to be forced into change. It gradually reorganizes around the stability you have created within yourself, reflecting back the calm certainty you have learned to inhabit.